A muffled cry echoed through the dense forest. The sound was raw, desperate, and unmistakable, an animal in pain. Alex's heart raced as they pushed through the thick underbrush, every step quickening their pulse. It was the unmistakable sound of a wolf caught in a trap. The crunching of leaves underfoot only seemed to make the animal's cries louder, more frantic. Time was slipping away. The snowstorm on the horizon threatened to arrive sooner than expected, but the real danger was closer. The wolf was in agony. Alex's eyes scanned the landscape, the distant trees barely visible in the foggy air, the world suffocating beneath the heavy silence of impending snow. With every painful whimper of the creature, Alex's resolve hardened. They couldn't let the wolf die here, alone and trapped. The heavy iron snare was tearing at the creature's leg, the jagged metal edges slicing into its flesh with each frantic movement. Alex had no time to waste. This mission, this rescue, was their responsibility. But as they neared the source of the cries, a sudden snap from the brush halted them. The trap was more complex than they'd anticipated, and time was rapidly running out. The sound of metal clinking echoed in the stillness as Alex worked furiously to release the wolf from its trap. Their fingers were trembling, not just from the cold, but from the weight of the moment. The storm was closing in, but the immediate threat was the trap itself. The snare was a cruel contraption, its metal teeth digging deeper into the wolf's leg with each failed attempt to pull free. Alex's breath came in ragged gasps, visible in the frigid air as their hands worked to unbind the twisted metal. They could feel the wolf's pain, its heavy breathing matching their own as the minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The storm raged around them, snow now falling in a thick white blanket, but there was no time to stop. Alex's thoughts were a blur, only the wolf mattered now. With one final twist, Alex managed to loosen the snare. The wolf flinched, its body jerking with an instinctual fear of the unknown, but Alex's voice was soft, steady. "You're safe now," they whispered, but the words felt hollow, as the real battle was only just beginning. With a final yank, Alex freed the wolf from the trap, their hands shaking as they gently cradled its injured leg. The creature whimpered weakly, but its pain was far from over. The leg was badly injured, deep cuts and abrasions that would take weeks, if not months, to fully heal. Alex looked around desperately, trying to focus through the growing storm. The visibility was getting worse, and the wolf's condition was worsening. There was no way they could get it back to the rescue center in time. But the alternative was unthinkable, leaving the animal to suffer alone in the freezing cold, exposed to the elements. Alex's heart thudded in their chest as they made a decision. The wolf was coming with them, no matter the cost. With a deep breath, Alex scooped the wolf into their arms, its body cold and trembling. "Hold on," Alex murmured, their voice filled with a mixture of determination and fear. The storm howled louder, but Alex moved forward, the wolf's weight pulling them deeper into the wilderness. The forest seemed to close in around them, the wind howling with the fury of an approaching blizzard. Alex stumbled through the underbrush, the weight of the wolf growing heavier with each step. The storm was no longer a distant threat, it was here. Snow pelted Alex's face, stinging their skin, but they pressed on, each step slower than the last. The wolf's body was limp, its head resting against Alex's chest, the occasional whimper a painful reminder of the severity of its injuries. Alex knew they couldn't make it back to the shelter in time, but the nearest town was still hours away. And every minute that passed, the wolf's chances of survival diminished. Alex's mind raced as they looked for shelter, any sign of safety from the relentless storm. They spotted a small cave in the distance, the only hope they had. "Just a little further," Alex whispered, their voice raw from the cold and fear. The cave was their only refuge, but would it be enough to save the wolf? The cave was small, but offered a brief respite from the raging storm outside. Alex carefully placed the wolf down on the cold ground, its body limp, but still alive. They were both shivering from the cold, their breath coming in labored gasps as the wind howled outside the small shelter. Alex couldn't afford to lose the wolf now. The injuries were severe, but the animal was still breathing, still fighting. "You're not alone anymore," Alex whispered, their voice thick with emotion. They set to work quickly, gathering what little supplies they had, some makeshift bandages, antiseptic, and a blanket to try and keep the wolf warm. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the cave, there was a fragile peace. Alex's thoughts, however, were far from calm. The storm wasn't the only threat they faced. The wolf's survival depended on Alex's next move, and they had to make it count. Alex sat beside the wolf, the cave's silence only broken by the steady rhythm of their breathing. The fire crackled in the background, casting flickering shadows on the rough walls. The storm outside raged without mercy, but inside a fragile sense of calm settled. Alex's fingers traced the wolf's fur gently, feeling the uneven rise and fall of its chest. The injuries were deep, but the wolf was alive. Alex thought of their own scars, the ones that never healed, and for a brief moment, the world outside the cave seemed far away. They hadn't expected this kind of responsibility, not after the loss they had suffered years ago. But here it was, in front of them, the chance to save something precious. "You're not alone," Alex whispered, their voice almost cracking under the weight of the unspoken words. The wolf's eyes blinked slowly, its gaze softening for a moment. Alex's heart clenched. This was more than just a rescue. This was redemption. But redemption came at a price Alex wasn't sure they were ready to pay. The night dragged on. Alex stayed by the wolf's side, feeding it small sips of water and checking its injuries. The wolf's body was weak, but it remained alert, watching Alex with those intelligent blue eyes. Alex had seen similar eyes before, ones that had stared back at them in the worst moments of their life. The memories were sharp, painful, a life lost, a promise broken. But this wolf was a second chance. Alex moved to gather more firewood, and as they knelt by the flames, they felt a shift. The storm outside was relentless, but the cave had become a sanctuary. Alex knew it wouldn't last forever. The injuries were severe, and without proper treatment, the wolf wouldn't survive long. But they weren't going to give up. Not now. Not after everything. "We're not going anywhere," Alex murmured softly, more to themselves than to the wolf. It wasn't just about the animal anymore. It was about proving to themselves that they could still fight. As the storm showed no signs of letting up, Alex continued to tend to the wolf, their thoughts drifting back to their own past. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words and memories they weren't ready to face. But the wolf's presence was a comfort. It was a constant, steady reminder that they weren't alone in this world, even if it felt like they had been for so long. Alex reached out and gently stroked the wolf's fur, feeling the warmth of its body and the slight tremble of its muscles. The wolf was still fighting, even if it wasn't clear if it would win. Alex understood that struggle all too well. The storm outside howled, but Alex remained focused, determined to see this rescue through. The bond between them was growing, unspoken but undeniable. "We'll get through this," Alex whispered. The wolf's ears twitched, its eyes closing momentarily, and Alex took that as a sign of trust. The hours passed and Alex found themselves growing restless. The wolf's injuries hadn't worsened, but they hadn't improved either. The storm outside still raged, its howling wind and swirling snow, a constant reminder of the dangers beyond the cave. But Alex was resolute. They couldn't let this wolf slip away, not like everything else they had lost. "I'm not giving up on you," Alex whispered, as though the words would make the promise more real. The cave was small, but it was all they had for now. And it had to be enough. Alex could feel the weight of the situation growing heavier. They had no idea how long they could stay here, or if they could find proper medical help for the wolf. But one thing was certain. They couldn't leave. Not again. Not after everything that had happened. The wolf's breathing was steady, and Alex took that as a sign of hope. It was dawn when Alex finally fell into a restless sleep. They woke moments later to find the wolf still by their side, its eyes watching them carefully. The storm had eased, but the damage had already been done. The ground outside was buried in snow, and the path to safety was no clearer than before. But as Alex sat up, rubbing their eyes, they realized something. The wolf had survived the night, and maybe, just maybe, it could survive this ordeal after all. "You're stronger than you look," Alex murmured with a smile, brushing a bit of snow from the wolf's fur. It was a small victory, but it was enough. The bond they had formed in the last few hours was undeniable, and Alex knew they had to continue. They couldn't walk away now. The wolf was counting on them, and Alex wasn't about to let it down. The morning after the storm, the landscape had changed. The snow had piled high against the cave entrance, cutting off the route to safety. Alex paced anxiously, glancing at the wolf, whose eyes were wide with discomfort. They had no choice but to move. Time was against them. Alex had hoped for clearer skies, but the storm was just the beginning. They had to get out before the injuries became too severe, before the cold began to take its toll. "We need to leave now," Alex murmured, their voice tight with frustration. But the wolf's condition was precarious. It hadn't been able to walk properly yet, and the chance of finding the necessary medical help seemed slim. Alex's resolve wavered as the reality of their situation began to settle in. They had expected challenges, but this was worse than anticipated. Without the wolf's strength, Alex's options were limited. "I'll carry you if I have to," Alex said, not fully believing the words themselves. But there was no alternative. They had no idea how far the nearest town was, but they knew they couldn't stay in the cave forever. Alex carefully moved the wolf to their back, trying to avoid jarring its injured leg. The creature's weight was a burden, but Alex had no choice. The path ahead was treacherous, and every step was calculated with caution. Alex had expected a fight, but the wolf was quieter now, exhausted from both the injury and the ordeal of the storm. Still, Alex could feel the strength of its survival instinct pulsing through its body. It wasn't giving up. Not yet. "Hold on," Alex whispered, more to reassure themselves than the animal. With a deep breath, Alex moved forward, the world around them a blur of white. They could hear the wind howling through the trees, the snow crunching beneath their boots. But every step felt like a battle against time. The cold had already set in, biting through Alex's clothing and numbing their fingers. But they couldn't stop. Not now. The wolf's breathing was shallow, and Alex knew they had to make it out of the forest. The weight of the mission hung heavy on their shoulders, but they had no choice but to keep moving. After hours of trudging through the snow, Alex was beginning to feel the toll of the journey. The path had become steeper, more difficult, with rocks hidden under the snow and trees crowding in closer. The air was thin and cold, the wind sharp against their face. They had to stop. The wolf, still quiet, seemed to grow heavier with each passing minute. Alex finally found a small clearing and carefully laid the wolf down on a patch of untouched snow. Their body ached, and they were starting to feel the weight of exhaustion, but the wolf's condition was their priority. They checked its leg again, pressing lightly to see if there was any improvement. There wasn't. The bloodstains on the fur had dried, but the leg was swollen, and the wolf still couldn't put weight on it. Alex cursed under their breath, their frustration building. "We're not getting any closer to help," they muttered, their voice shaking with both cold and fear. The wilderness was vast, and the chances of finding civilization before nightfall seemed impossible. Frustration bubbled inside Alex. The storm had passed, but the obstacles weren't over. There was no clear path to safety, no sign of a town or shelter. The wolf's injuries were not healing, and the weight of the journey was dragging on them both. "I can't do this alone," Alex whispered, their voice breaking. It was the first time they had truly admitted it. Alone. Indeed. They had spent so many years fighting on their own, convincing themselves they didn't need anyone. But now, with the wolf at their side, they couldn't deny it any longer. They needed help. The realization hit hard, like a blow to the chest. "But I won't stop," Alex continued, their voice hardening with resolve. "I won't let you die out here." They gently lifted the wolf back onto their back, their hands more steady now. The storm may have passed, but the battle was far from over. The weight of their promise settled on Alex's shoulders as they began to move again, step after careful step. As dusk settled over the forest, Alex could feel the weight of both the wolf and the journey pressing down on them. They had been walking for hours, and their energy was running low. The path had become even more treacherous, the ground slippery and uneven. Alex's breath was ragged, and the cold had seeped deep into their bones. The wolf's condition hadn't improved, but its quiet trust in Alex was a small comfort. Every step felt like it could be their last, but Alex refused to stop. "We're almost there," Alex whispered, though they knew it wasn't true. The night was closing in fast, and the distance left to travel was uncertain. They needed to find shelter. And fast. The weight of their promise, to get the wolf to safety, seemed heavier than ever. The forest was no longer a refuge. It was a dangerous wilderness that threatened to swallow them whole. But they couldn't stop now. As Alex trudged forward, the path ahead began to clear, but a sudden noise stopped them in their tracks. A distant snap of twigs caught their attention, and the realization hit them hard. They weren't alone. The wolf's injuries had slowed them down, but the forest had other dangers. Alex's instincts kicked in. They crouched low, eyes scanning the woods, heart pounding. Was it another predator, or just the wind? The silence was unbearable. Every part of the forest seemed to be waiting. Suddenly, Alex spotted something in the distance, a figure moving between the trees. It was too quick to be a person, too fluid to be an animal. Alex's pulse quickened. The figure disappeared, but the unease lingered. Had the wolf been abandoned? Was someone still hunting it? Alex's mind raced, and the weight of their mission grew heavier. There was more to the story than Alex had realized. Something had led them here, something beyond the simple rescue. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As they continued forward, their thoughts wandered to the wolf's injuries. The snare had been too precise. Was it a trap set for the wolf specifically? The possibility of human interference nagged at them. Was the animal a victim of the illegal wildlife trade? The pieces began to fit together. Alex's connection to the wolf deepened. But so did the weight of their responsibility. They weren't just rescuing an animal. They were uncovering a larger truth. The deeper Alex thought about it, the more the situation unfolded like a dark mystery. The snare, the wounds, they were deliberate. This wasn't just an unfortunate accident. Someone had gone out of their way to harm the wolf. Alex's grip on the wolf tightened. They had been caught in something far bigger than they had imagined. The storm had covered their tracks, but the storm was also revealing hidden truths. With a new sense of urgency, Alex moved the wolf further along the path. The truth had shifted everything. The rescue was no longer just about saving a life. It was about exposing the cruelty behind it. The wolf's trust in Alex was the only thing keeping them grounded. "We'll figure this out," Alex muttered to the wolf. The journey ahead would be harder, and the stakes were higher. But they weren't backing down now. The storm had died down, but the forest felt more dangerous than ever. Alex had no idea what lay ahead, but they couldn't stop now. The wolf's breathing had become labored, and the weight of the journey was wearing on both of them. Alex's muscles ached, their thoughts scattered. They had to keep going. As the sky began to darken, Alex's vision blurred with fatigue. The fear of failure was sharp. If they didn't find help soon, the wolf wouldn't make it. Alex stopped in their tracks. A distant light flickered through the trees. Hope sparked in their chest. The first sign of civilization in days. They quickened their pace, but the wolf's limp was slowing them down. The wind picked up, blowing snow in their faces, but Alex pushed forward, fueled by the flicker of hope. They couldn't fail now. Not when they were so close. The closer Alex got to the light, the clearer it became. A cabin, small and weathered, standing against the oncoming night. Relief flooded over them, but it was quickly replaced by uncertainty. Would they let them in? Could they help? Alex approached the door with hesitation, the wolf's breath shallow on their back. They knocked, their fist weak against the door. The waiting felt endless. Would someone answer? The door creaked open, and a figure appeared in the doorway. Alex felt a rush of relief but didn't let their guard down. The stranger's eyes widened at the sight of the wolf. "Come in," the figure said quickly, ushering them inside. Alex entered, feeling the warmth of the cabin wash over them. The wolf was carefully lowered onto a cot, and Alex could finally breathe. Help had come just in time. As the warmth of the cabin enveloped them, Alex exhaled deeply, their shoulders sagging in relief. The wolf was safe, for now. The stranger moved quickly, setting up supplies to treat the injuries. "You saved it," the figure murmured, glancing up at Alex. But Alex could only nod, exhausted. "We saved it," they replied. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time in days, they felt a flicker of hope. The days passed in the warmth of the cabin, and the wolf's condition slowly improved. Alex had found a quiet place for themselves by the fire, exhausted but relieved. The bond they had forged through hardship was undeniable. The weight of the rescue was slowly lifting. The wolf's eyes, once filled with pain and mistrust, were now soft, watching Alex with a newfound understanding. "You made it through," Alex whispered, stroking the wolf's fur gently. But as much as Alex wanted to hold on to this moment, they knew they couldn't stay. The wilderness still called to them, and so did the rest of the world. As the days passed, the wolf regained strength. Alex knew it was time to leave the cabin, to return the wolf to its rightful home, the wild. Yet, a part of them felt the ache of saying goodbye. This animal had become more than just a mission. It was a reminder of resilience, of what was worth fighting for. "You've come a long way," Alex whispered to the wolf as they prepared for their departure. The outside world waited, but the bond formed within these walls would linger forever. It was time to set the wolf free. Alex stepped outside, the cold air biting at their skin. The wolf stood at their side, no longer limping, but still watching Alex with those intelligent eyes. "Go," Alex whispered, giving the wolf a soft push. The wolf hesitated, looking up at Alex, as if unsure of what the next step would be. But it was time. With a final glance, the wolf turned and trotted into the forest, its steps steady and sure. Alex stood still, watching it disappear into the woods, a bittersweet feeling settling in their chest. "Be free," Alex murmured, their heart heavy but hopeful. As the wolf disappeared into the forest, Alex stood frozen in place. The forest was quiet, save for the soft rustling of the wind in the trees. The ache in their chest slowly subsided, replaced by a deep sense of peace. Alex realized they had given the wolf what it needed most, a second chance. But in doing so, they had found something for themselves too, a reminder that even in the harshest of places, there is room for healing. "It was worth it," Alex said quietly, the words meant for themselves, a final acknowledgement of the journey. Alex turned away from the forest, their footsteps crunching in the snow. As they walked back toward the cabin, they realized something. This rescue, this journey, was more than just about the wolf. It was about healing the wounds that Alex had carried for so long. The past was still there, but now it felt less like a burden. The bond with the wolf had given Alex a chance to heal, and maybe, just maybe, find peace. They reached the cabin, the door creaking as they stepped inside. The world beyond awaited, but for now, Alex was ready for whatever came next. The wind had quieted, and the night was still. Alex stood outside the cabin one last time, looking out at the moonlit snow. It was a moment of silence, a pause before moving forward. The way of the past, the storm, and the rescue had all led to this quiet evening. Alex felt something inside them shift, something they hadn't felt in years, a sense of peace. They didn't need to chase after the past anymore. The future was theirs to shape. Alex turned back to the cabin, the door creaking as they entered. Inside, the warmth and safety were waiting, but their mind was at peace. They had come a long way, but the journey wasn't over. Not for them. Not for the world outside. They felt ready for the challenges ahead, knowing they had made a difference, however small. The wolf had given them something invaluable, a lesson in redemption and redemption. Alex sat down by the fire, the crackling flames a soothing backdrop to their thoughts. The silence in the cabin was comforting. Alex closed their eyes for a moment, listening to the quiet. They had done what they set out to do. They had saved the wolf, and in doing so they had saved a part of themselves. As they sat by the fire, the memories of the rescue began to settle into a sense of closure. There was still much to do, but for now, Alex could breathe easy. They had found peace in a place they didn't expect. The journey had changed them, and they were ready for whatever came next. As the fire burned low, Alex stood and walked to the window, looking out at the still, moonlit landscape. The world was quiet now, but it was a peace that felt earned. "Maybe it's time to let go," Alex whispered, the words feeling lighter than they had in years. They knew the world outside was waiting, full of possibilities. But in this moment, all they had to do was breathe and let the silence wash over them. The final beat came not with a loud declaration, but with a quiet, lingering moment of reflection. The world continued outside, but Alex had found something that mattered more: peace. The wolf was free. Alex was free. And that was enough. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Alex didn't fear it. They were ready for whatever came next.